That's awesome. You guys are fantastic. I'm kind of hurt that there's not more people. I'll get over it, I promise. So, welcome to Accessibility at Conventions. I will be talking about the past, the present, and the future of accessibility, at least as it pertains to BronyCon. I do have the ear of a lot of other conventions. Most people can say that if they've been to more than one convention, they've seen me there. I've worked at Everfree Northwest, BabsCon, TrotCon, Midwest Brony Fest, Nightmare Nights Dallas, and of course, BronyCon. 3.5 years ago, I was an average person doing average things. I was trying to become a midwife, had just been accepted to Bastyr University, and the day after I got my letter, I was hit by a car. While that put paid to my midwifery career, it did open my eyes to things that a lot of people never really pay attention to. Accessibility is needed. It's not a privilege or a perk of being injured or being born differently or having an issue that you can't handle by yourself. It's necessary so that everyone can participate in life at the same level or at the best level that they can. An average person walking around doesn't notice curb cuts. They don't notice the tweeting of the crosswalk. They just hear it as some annoying sound. But for somebody that you know, those things are necessary for daily life. It lets them cross the street. It lets them cross the street without falling off a curb. I come towards accessibility from the point of, at one point, knowing nothing other than the usual, well, this I heard this is that, and oh yeah, that wheelchair stick dude, that's for people who use wheelchairs or walkers or whatever. Well, really had my eyes opened. You don't really notice that registration lines, those snake lines, really tight corners until you have to think about how you're going to get through them. So I fully admit that until 3.5 years ago, I didn't think anything about accessibility. I thought, all's good, everything's fine. You can get to where you need to be, right? Well, then that's all that matters. Well, car wrecks happen, accidents happen. Sometimes people are born in ways that make it so they can't access the same things we do. You don't notice how many stairs there are. You don't notice how inaccessible an elevator actually is until you need it. Well, now I need it. Since then, I have done my best as a staff member at the various conventions that I've worked for to improve accessibility. Part of improving that accessibility trades on the fact that, hi, my name's Line Monkey, and everybody knows me. Because everybody knows me and because I work everywhere, I have the ear of a lot of different conventions. People that work at the conventions, people that make policy for conventions. Everfree Northwest started with no accessibility. None. And then I required accessibility. I required some way to get to where I needed to be, and suddenly, Well, we're not going to label you as disabled, but you're going to get this little heart sticker on your badge that's going to let you enter these panels ahead of everybody else so that you can get a seat. Fantastic work for Everfree, huh? You know, I have done my best to make sure that at least every year I introduce something that can be improved. Last year here at BronyCon, it was the training video for staff, how to be ADA friendly. Before last year, there was no training. There was no nothing. They didn't understand how to interact. You know, they weren't trained on how to interact with somebody in a wheelchair. Do they grab the wheelchair? By the way, the answer to that is no, never. They didn't understand that an adaptive device is legally considered an extension of the person using it. That's their body. You don't touch them without consent. You know, the policy for service animals was laid out, and there was an actual policy for service animals. Don't interact with them. As far as staff is concerned, they don't exist. A service animal does not get interacted with by any member of staff now, or at least by any member of security, which is the main people out on the floor. The lovely, lovely blue shirts with the security across the back. It's very awesome. You know, until last year, there was no training. It was just whatever, you know, whatever anybody knew individually, that's what they did. So there were some incidents a couple of years ago that I was informed of by the attendees outside of the con. So I helped introduce policy to make sure that it didn't happen again. Now, in the very, very beginning of conventions specific to My Little Pony, like I said, there was no accessibility at all. It was, hope you've got fully functioning legs, eyes, ears, and mouths. Hope you've got a fully functioning brain. You know, hope that you have, you know, everything considered socially normal, because otherwise you're not going to be able to handle this convention. That was the beginning. Now, even before I get involved, it began to improve. But there's always room for improvement, right? Everybody can improve something. So every year, every convention that I work at or go to or know people at, I give suggestions. So we've done a lot of work here at BronyCon to help make sure that everybody's accessibility needs are met. Oh, hi, Virus. Why don't you join me up here?
No.
Yes.
Why?
Because I said. Thank you. So this is Virus, guys, coming down the aisle. He is the commander in charge of line control and my boss. Welcome to the stage, Senpai. He noticed me. It's true. I'm being vibrated at a lot. What? Okay. So Virus actually helped implement some of the accessibility stuff that pertain to lines. You remember when we did the planning stuff last year when I was the sub-commander?
Yes.
We actually went down, it was with, who all was on that planning committee?
So many
Events, how many from CONCOM were there?
Which is convention committee.
Yes,
They're the
CONCOM
big
is
people in
convention committee. They're the ones who run the whole show.
We had a lot of people. It was a big deal.
It was a huge deal. We actually made sure that there were chairs in what was then known as the special access
It
areas.
seems like a small change, but chairs to people with special needs is a huge, huge deal.
You know, We have people who've had recent knee surgery. We really don't want them, falling over in a regular line. We have to call medical, and they have to call the emergency room and the EMS, and then there's sirens and everybody's wailing and gnashing of teeth, and that's just a bad idea. I'd really rather not have to call an ambulance for anybody but me. What?
I agree.
Yeah.
Because then I get yelled at.
Yes.
Eventually I get yelled at, and I don't like getting yelled at.
It's very true. So we try to prevent that. One of the things with the accessibility passes, we don't ask why you need it. We don't care. Well, okay, we care, but we don't care to know why. It's none of our business. I don't need to know that somebody has epilepsy. I don't need to know that someone's just had surgery. I don't need to know that someone is hard of hearing and needs to get at the front seat. I don't need to know if someone is developmentally challenged. I don't need to know. I don't. It's none of my business. My business is to make sure that anybody who needs that access gets it without question. Because quite frankly, I really get tired of being asked, just out of the blue, so why are you in that chair? Do you mind if I ask you what happened? The answer is, my wheelchair is medically necessary, go away. A lot of people don't want to be asked. And it's none of our business why. So the policy is, an attendee asked for a accessibility pass. They get one handed to them. Because it's none of our business. We just make sure that accessibility needs are being met. So we have the accessibility pass, which allows priority seating. You go in ahead of people because maybe it takes you longer to get there. Maybe you have a specific area that you need to be so that you can know what's going on the panel, so that you can see it better or hear it better, or maybe you need to not be sitting up at the front. Maybe you need to be sitting in a back corner for your own mental health. That's what they're for. So we have the accessibility passes. We have the accessible lines for registration this year, also for autographs. We've got them for the main panel. We've got them for BronyPalooza, for the marketplace. These are areas where if you require accessibility to be met, you have an accessibility need that needs to be met, you go in ahead so that you're not being trampled. Because I don't like running over people with my wheelchair. Okay, no, I take that back, I really do. I try not to, but I ran over Goose today.
You probably had it coming. We have recharge rooms.
We do. We have recharge rooms. Fantastic things. People who have panic disorders, or who are just overwhelmed, or who have, are on the autistic spectrum. Recharge rooms. You get away from the hustle and bustle and all of the noise and the different colors and the sounds and the smells and everything else, the textures that are just different from what you're used to. And there's a place for you to go get away from it. It's really awesome. I saw that and was like,
yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I like those.
It's amazing.
They're very nice. And we have different levels, so if you completely need like blackout silence away from everything, it's further away. That's red and yellow, green, depending what you need.
It's really, really awesome. These are things that, as a convention gets older, they improve more and more. I'm really proud of the way that BronyCon has embraced improving their accessibility for everyone. What was it, 2 years ago, there was somebody was trying to say something about Google Glass and trying to ban them?
Maybe, probably. 2 years ago sounds about right for Google Glass.
Yeah. A couple years ago when Google Glass started, you know, everybody was like, I'm gonna get one, I'm gonna get one. Well, we had people who were using Google Glass. They were using it for vision impaired issues. Well, there was a small subsection that were trying to throw a fit about how, well, they can be used to record things, and we didn't, you know, we had people who were already recording and who were being paid to record it. So it was this whole brouhaha, and it was eventually settled as, no, you can't ban them. If they're being used as a medical device, you can't ban them. You know, things like that happen. Let's see, what else is going on this year that's changed? See, I've covered the recharge rooms, the how to be ADA friendly training that was put up last year.
We just had really good de-escalation training this year.
De-escalation training, yep, that was the thing.
Part of the problem some conventions can have is even staff can be overwhelmed by situations. If they're not used to being in a situation where somebody is needing special attention, they might work IT, working on their computer, and that's all they do for like their life. And then they come here, they're filled with 10,000 people needing their help. They can be overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed.
I don't really get overwhelmed.
We have to do special de-escalation training to show how not to, how to get down to other people's level who needs it. How if you have, for instance, a missing child who is upset, can't find parents, how to deal
That's
down.
not a missing child, that's a missing parents.
The missing parent.
The child knows exactly where they are.
Truth.
And if you're there, the child's not missing.
Well, I might be. But it's how to kind of communicate on other people's level, how to, if they're upset with things, how to talk calmly, how to reassure them, how to just kind of break everything down so they're not confused, so they know what's happening around them. We had one of our one of my new supervisors. She is trained in that because that's what she deals with at her job. She actually works for
We can't say.
She works for an appliance company, and she deals with over-the-phone de-escalation situations. Yeah, which can be bad when you have a company that's like, where's our hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of product? And it's like, okay, let's bring it down, let's talk on your level, let's get the right wordage out, things like that, and things where you kind of need to calm everybody down. And in a situation like a convention, it's very important.
That actually brings me to another thing that we have, the communication cards.
Yeah.
Because communication is important.
Yes, most important.
We have the green, yellow, red communication cards now. We've had them for...
Yes, last year was the first year.
Last year was the first, no.
Nope.
No.
Okay. All the years blend together for me.
3 years ago they started, but they were only available to people who specifically asked for them.
Gotcha. Okay.
Last year they started handing them out to everyone because it's a great idea. And of course, you know, it's... Don't worry, my phone's been buzzing up here this whole time because, I don't know.
She's popular.
As popular can be. Wait, what? Never mind. Sorry, that's one of my things. I actually have to finish those songs. So we've got the communication cards that help people know who is okay to talk to right then. It's pretty cool stuff. Another thing that we did during the ADA training was some people may not communicate at quite the level you're used to. Maybe you speak in a very clear and eloquent fashion. They may not speak perfectly. That's actually something that happens to me when I'm about to have a seizure. Fun time. Or they may not speak at all. One of the parts of the training was figure out how they need to communicate, how they prefer. Don't try to push your communication on them. If they prefer sign language, figure out if they have an interpreter. If they have an interpreter, Don't talk to the interpreter. They're not part of the conversation. You talk to the person you're talking to. If they prefer pen and paper, that's actually a thing. All security members are supposed to have pen and paper on them at all times. That's part of the training that we went through. What's some of the stuff we've got on for, do we have anything on for next year that we're going to be improving?
I'm sure not yet, because we're not.
Because this year's not done yet.
Headspace of next year at the moment in that sense.
Yeah.
But every year we have more.
Every
we
year,
improve.
yeah, like that.
We talk to the community. That's the best thing you can do. If there's anything you think that could be improved upon, head to the forums. Let us know. We love community outreach in that sense of letting us know what your issues are so that we can handle them to improve things for the next year.
If you would prefer to do it in person, go to ConOps.
Absolutely.
Every member of staff here, we work here because we like it. We like helping people. Now, some of us like helping people way out in the front. We like being the ones you always interact with. But there are other people that work here that you guys will never see. You'll never see them. But every member of staff wants to know, what more can we do? We want to improve. We want to make things better for everyone. And accessibility is an area that can always use improvement. So let's see, what time is it right now? It is 5:20. Fantastic. So we've gotten through the fact that at the beginning, nobody has accessibility, and at the beginning, I didn't recognize anything. And then, well, a ton of moving plastic and metal at 70 miles an hour changed my mind. And then we've gone through a lot of the improvements that BronyCon specifically has made. Do any of you guys have any questions about, well, anything related to accessibility at conventions? Yes, sir. There's no way for us to do that.
We take it on people's word. We're not here to judge. If somebody comes up and says they need a pass, you need a pass. If somebody wants to take advantage, I'd rather have one or two people take advantage than turn somebody away because they need it and us evaluate them that they don't. At the end of the day, I'm perfectly fine with kind of having one or two people get away with it if it helps other people.
Yes.
Deaf interpreters, ASL interpreters, do you provide them at all for shows? Do you only provide them if it's requested? And that's ASL interpreters. And my second question is, have you guys thought about looking a little bit into disability studies for the language you use, because the language is a little antiquated and not in line with disability activists, like for example, special needs. No disability activist would use that. It's people with disabilities. And it's easily Googleable, but there's a lot of discussion around that and what the most contemporary language is. And I was also curious how you deal with ASL.
That's an excellent point.
Okay.
You want to take that?
Let me take.
You take.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. One of the things that we've come across here, and I actually asked about interpreters my first year. because I have friends who are deaf. The answer that I was given was that BronyCon can't provide interpreters. I think at that point it was monetary.
To an extent, it is something we're looking into because obviously there's a need for it. We are currently changing hands in a lot of ways, so hopefully we will be able to get something coming in soon. A lot of it is dependent on, we can't go out and ask for these services in a lot of ways. Sometimes they have to come to us. So we encourage anybody with those skills to come onto our staff because then we can utilize it. Absolutely. But as far as the monetary aspect comes in, because we would have to go out and hire somebody, and then a lot of different liability things come into play. So as it is, if you know anybody who would love to come, let us know. Send something out, have them send us something. We would love taking them on, and we could even get some training so that people like myself, we could learn a few things offhand so we can help.
I know a lot of sign because my youngest daughter was nonverbal autistic. And that was her form of communication. As far as how we deal with interpreters themselves, I have always informed any of the attendees who have asked me that their best bet is to talk to ConOps, convention operations, or call the BCC, the Baltimore Convention Center, prior to coming to the convention. Because that's really the best that I can say until we have volunteers. You know, all of the staff are volunteers. None of us get paid for this. We do a lot of work. You got a fire to go put out?
I don't know, maybe.
Okay. None of us get paid for this. So if we were to hire interpreters, that would be an additional cost that we wouldn't be able to afford a lot of VIPs. It wouldn't be in our budget. The language question. We know that there's always room to improve. Last year, the badges did say special access, and they were referred to as special needs passes. This year, they are labeled accessibility passes, which is a lot better, I believe, because it doesn't mention any kind of anything. It's an accessibility. You require accessibility. And because they were used for a year and said special access or special needs, it's really hard for people who only work here one weekend a year to change what they're calling it. So I understand that can be very frustrating. But it is labeled as accessibility. We have said that we are not to call them special needs passes. They are not for special needs because that's not a thing. We have been improving on that. We are trying very hard. There's always going to be room for improvement. And we really, really do appreciate when specific instances are brought to our attention. So if you hear a member of staff saying something that could be considered derogatory, or something that's just not really best practice, please let us know. Tell ConOps, or if it's a member of security, tell the admin at Security Pen. We want to know, we want to improve. We can't improve without feedback. that there's quite literally over 100 people just in security alone. So definitely let us know. We want to know specific instances so that we can help retrain whoever has said the thing that should not have been said. Now, my medication makes it so that I have a really, really bad memory. Did I cover your questions?
What you said about people only volunteer here once a year, because to me, BronyCon is so disability friendly that I'm surprised that people who volunteer wouldn't have any knowledge of disability outside the conference. That surprises me.
It may be surprising to people who need this accessibility when they find a convention that really, really tries to go above and beyond. They're very surprised that every member of security or every member of staff doesn't understand these things. But just like I didn't before I needed them, they don't, because they don't need them, and it doesn't hit their awareness. So they follow the rules here because it's part of their rules, but they don't think about it outside of that.
Well, do you have any ideas about how people could think more about disabled people, or just that's not? I guess
when it comes to staff, we do try. We try to make sure that they're educated the best that we can, considering we don't really have a whole lot of time with them, and they're volunteering, they're not getting paid, so most of their time is being spent just doing their job so that they can then go enjoy the convention. But thank you very much for your questions and your responses. That was very informative. And you had your hand up next.
Have you considered, is there a possibility of BronyCon, I don't know if they are already or if they could in the future, but partnering with different types of disability advocacy groups to try that could help identify ways to improve beyond the concerns that con goers bring directly to staff?
Actually, that's a really good question. I'm actually going to write that down so that I can take it to CONCOM after the panel. Or, hey, yeah, you.
No fires.
Do you want to take something to Eli? So this young gentleman here was wondering if BronyCon would ever consider partnering with a disability advocacy group.
I think so. I mean, I also work for PAX, and PAX does a lot of things like that with disabled gamers, where we have different booths set up that kind of advocate, that kind of show off wares and things like that can help people. So I think...
I'm thinking they're considering a closer partnership where they provide education and whatnot to the staff.
Oh.
Would be, I think it would be...
That's something I've actually been pushing for, because at PAX we also
have
that.
the training specifically with...
We have training specifically with, in conjunction with like recharge rooms that we have there.
Mm-hmm.
We have training with an organization that I've been trying to push for. And once again, when things possibly might be changing hands, I might have more leeway to make that happen.
But we're not saying anything about the possibility of changing hands of anything of this convention at this panel.
No. But
that's for closing ceremonies, right?
Yeah. But I'm pushing for things like that. I'm always pushing for things like that. My sister is disabled. She has Cornelia de Lange syndrome, which is both a physical and mental disability. So I'm always advocating for anything new that can be helpful for anybody. So I push for years. I've been pushing.
So the answer is given certain things that may be happening at the end of this convention before the beginning of next convention, that is probably something that can maybe get done.
I can yell a lot louder.
Did you? Okay.
I was just wondering, because you had talked a lot about various assistive services and things for people with disabilities. And one question that I was wondering is, I was wondering if there were any changes that were made to accommodate for blind visitors, because I noticed that a lot of BronyCon has a lot of excellent direction, and in terms of very useful signage, but I'm wondering what, if anything, is being done to accommodate blind visitors to whom that might not be.
I told you so. I told you last year.
Did you?
Yes, I did. Ha. Sorry, that was actually one of the things that I brought up last year that could use improvement. We, at this moment, do not have much in the way of assistance or accessibility access for those who are, oh gosh, sorry, my brain lost the word. Thank you. That was the word. That was exactly the words. It's been a very long day and my brain is trying to misfire. I appreciate your patience while I attempt to find words. For those who are visually impaired, right now we don't really have much other than there's Braille on the door signs that have the number of the room. That's pretty much all we have right now. For low-sighted individuals, a lot of the signage itself is brightly colored. I know that the contrast is maybe not the best, but we're working on that as well.
All right.
Given the work you've done with so many conventions around the country, have you considered or have you done any sort of documentation for smaller conventions or new conventions coming up where they could, right from the outset, prioritize what needs to be done to help people with disabilities?
Actually, no, but that's a fantastic idea. Thank you for it. I will probably do that anyways.
To an extent.
Well, yeah, to an extent, because there are some
our,
things.
Our head of security, he does head of security for like 5 or 6 different conventions over the country. His handbook for security training is the same that he uses for all conventions, and it always gets modified every year by all input from security personnel, and it gets adjusted as he goes through his conventions. So to an extent, a lot of that training does get passed down and does get trickled down and improved upon, not just through BronyCon, but through some conventions like ACEN, which is Anime Central, that I know he works.
Crossings Con.
Yeah.
Crossings Con.
So there's a lot
Good.
that of different audiences that he gets input from. He packages it nicely, and then he just adds to it every single year, and it just spreads. So whatever convention our security head is a part of, everybody kind of gets familiarized with that documentation. So to an extent, yes. But for small conventions, that would be an absolutely great thing for conventions just starting out.
Yeah.
It should be something more open source.
It should be, and I will work on
And I can
stealing Rabbi's ideas.
I can talk to him about that.
Okay, could you bring the microphone over here to the gentleman in the green shirt? Yes, that's you.
I'd first like to start by mentioning that my first BronyCon was in 2013, and I noticed that there were a lot of individuals with various limitations who attended it, and the reason they came is because they noticed how the show was making them feel better, giving them a sense of community. And it was through BronyCon in December of that year that I asked, you guys should put on a panel regarding advocacy for individuals with special needs, to which they told me, if you want to, submit it. And for the last 3 years, that's what I've been doing as lead of coping with limitations through Pony. So I'd like to say that BronyCon has made a great effort continually trying to look out for individuals with special needs. And speaking as a blind person, I will definitely say that I'm very happy with the way the security knows to come up and kindly ask and kindly direct and not speak in any sort of derogatory or condescending way.
We would never allow that, ever.
And that's what I like to talk about whenever I do my presentations. I'll be doing our next one tomorrow. But as you mentioned about, as it was mentioned before, about advocacy groups, we've been able to outreach beyond BronyCon thanks to the fact that there's been people from the press who have attended BronyCon and have seen our presentation and realized that the Bronies have a really good thing going, and the fact that you guys are all listening. You're figuring out ways to make things better. And because of that, a disabilities advocate actually presented my presentation in her own way at the Cider Fest in Milwaukee. And I'm hoping, because I've done it for 3 years, I always bring along source materials to hand out. Along with, I have with me flash drives that contain all the information relating to all of what we've done for the past 3 years, including PowerPoints, relatable videos, and resources that can be used for mental health, as well as outreach to various organizations that you may not know exist, that can help you to go that extra mile beyond the convention. So
That would be absolutely fantastic, and I would never turn that down.
if you'd like it, at the end of this panel, I'll be more than happy to hand you a flash drive which contains all our information from the past 3 years.
Fantastic, I will take it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But just so that you all know, we're all looking out, and BronyCon continues to do well. And one final point is, when we were mentioning about ASL, has it ever been put within the staff listings for people to get a 3-day badge that if they were an ASL interpreter, they could get a 3-day badge?
I don't know if we've ever come out
And
specifically
straight out
asked.
ask, I think that's something that we
It's
do
something
need to
we could
do.
definitely look into, since it obviously is a need.
Because I was talking to people about ASL last year, because there was, again, I've been working with various other disability rights advocates, and one of them said, you guys need to get ASL, at least for the main events where the larger audiences are. And but there has to be people who are going through schooling, need to get their credits. So why wouldn't they be the ones that you could easily reach out to, say, hey, free 3-day pass if you would just do sign language for these panels? Like maybe find 5 to 10 people who need to get their hours, they get their hours, they get their pass, and then therefore you wouldn't have to worry about the monetary backlash of having to hire a very pricey interpreter.
Yep.
That's a fantastic
Yeah,
idea.
just reaching out specifically for that kind of talent. Absolutely, that's something I think we should look into.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you very much, and as soon as the presentation is over here, I will bring you a flash drive.
Fantastic.
Very much.
All right, do we have other questions? And yes.
I do have a suggestion for improvement. So I was trying to figure out where to go for one of the rooms for a panel, and I have an accessibility pad because I have to be seated toward the front of the room due to my vision and hearing. And I was told, well, we don't really have an area of the line for accessibility, but we're just going to call you out. And that just got very, very confusing. And it would really, really help if there was like a special designated area for those people who just need a little bit of time to be seated.
I can actually answer why that's not a thing for the smaller panels, for the smaller panel rooms. The hallways out there are narrow, yes? If we were to make a separate line for accessibility badges, that's too many lines in one area, and we would end up making it to where nobody can get through anyways. The best thing that we've been able to do right now is just, as we see an accessibility pass in the line, do you need to come up to the front? Do you need to do you have a specific area that you need to sit in? Please come with me so that you can get in there. We try to do it discreetly, but that's not really that possible all the time. But that's pretty much the best that we can do for the smaller panel rooms. Anything other than main hall, marketplace, BronyPalooza, autographs. Anything that's in a smaller area, we don't have the space to make those separate lines. Okay. Yes, dear. You with the purple shirt and the microphone already in your hand.
I was just going to say on that, would it be possible to specifically instruct them, hey, if you need to get an early approach one of the security or event staff members outside that room, rather than get in the line, or are we causing trouble there?
That causes a traffic jam towards the front. We don't want them to move out of the line and congregate at the front of the line, because that makes a clump, and clumps are not line, and clumps leads to grouping, and grouping leads to the house is on fire and everybody's dead.
I like lines, because I'm in charge of lines, and groups of people together is not a line. So yes, it's like, I want a snake, but I don't want a snake with a giant head, because that means that people come up next to it and then everybody just builds up further and further until the entire convention is just a clump.
Until the house catches fire and everybody dies.
So yes, so the way we have it now isn't the best, but it's the most functional for what we have allotted to us.
Could I just instead say, hey, I have to be seated just a little bit early because I have to be at the front of the room to do my visit and hearing. Could I just do that instead?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
What we've been doing this convention is everybody lines up together, and then a few minutes prior to doors open for everybody, we take all the accessibility out and we bring them into the hall so they can sit wherever they need, and then we bring in the rest of everybody else. That's the best way. That way we have one line, and then we can kind of separate and bring in.
Okay, he had his hand up first.
You mentioned BronyPalooza, and that got me wondering if you could talk a little about how you handle accessibility for that, because I understand, last year I stepped into BronyPalooza for a few minutes, but even though I don't have I don't have as much noise sensitivity as some people or anything like that, but it was a little overwhelming, and I understand that's an example of something where it would be difficult to change that without undermining the sort of rave environment that. So could you talk about some of those sorts of obstacles where one aspect of the environment may pose problems for specific audiences, but is difficult to change?
Basically, we expect our attendees to understand themselves. Our attendees know what they can and cannot handle. All of the events like BronyPalooza are very heavily advertised as being much like a rave. This means folks like me, I tend not to go into BronyPalooza at all. The flashing lights are very, very bad for me. I would much rather not have to go to an emergency room visit because I stepped into BronyPalooza when they're flashing the lights. We expect our attendees to know what they can and cannot handle. And if we also expect that if they get overwhelmed, that they know that they can leave. There's absolutely in no way do we ever lock people in anywhere. So if someone gets overwhelmed, we expect them to leave. We hope that they do. We want them to so that they're comfortable. We never want someone to overpower themselves with input that they're not used to or that they can't quite handle that much of right then. It's one of the reasons why the recharge rooms are fantastic.
Secondary, even if you want to be a part of like a musical event, things like that happening, you know, a party pretty much, we have the gala. And the gala is Saturday night.
I'll be there.
I will be there as well. Maybe we had sashes last year, so I'm hoping we get our
I'm going to be
sashes.
there in my pretty dress, and yeah.
I'll be there in my
But-
kilt, but a button-up. It's it's a fancy event. It's a little bit more low-key, you know, people, it's quieter, it's a lot more spacious. It's in the main event hall. There's no flashing lights. They have little skits, and it's overall just a lot more low-key and calming. On top of that, you gave me a great idea because maybe we could have a separate room that has big things that are streaming BronyPalooza, so that you can have the fun of the BronyPalooza music playing, but not be in a giant room crammed together with people in a hot environment with,
You know what
Yeah,
that would
so
be
you gave me a
really?
good idea.
No. Do you know what would be absolutely epic?
which is why we love this community
In-
feedback.
Instead of having it be streamed with speakers, do it with like Bluetooth.
Yeah, or any, both.
You know, so that the level of the volume
Yeah,
can
yeah.
be controlled individually.
Yeah. Huh?
And then we will have an absolutely silent rave in a secondary room. I like this idea. I like this idea a lot. Any other comments, questions, concerns with the star on the red shirt?
I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about where like the communication cards came from.
Sorry, keep the mic at one level so that I can hear you.
I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about where the communication cards came from.
The communication cards actually came from another convention specifically for those on the autistic spectrum. It was proven to be very, very helpful in allowing people to communicate their own level of comfort with talking to other people. And well, if it's a good idea there, it's probably going to be a good idea here. So they tried it out the first year, just handing it to people who asked. And they did kind of advertise that they were there. Well, the people who used the communication cards loved it. So the next year it was made available to every single attendee. You bought a badge, you got color communication cards and a thing that explained how they worked. And that's just how that happened. I think I have time for one more. Somebody have, yes, ma'am.
Do you know about how many people attend? Do you know about relatively how many people attend?
How many attendees that we
Yeah.
have? Last year we had 10,000. I believe that we are expecting more, but we won't get the final number until closing ceremonies.
I think it was 10,024.
No, it was just, I think it was 10,001.
Yeah, it was something like just a
We
handful
were
over
just
10,000.
able to say, yes, we had more than 10,000 attendees.
Just enough to say that, to make that claim.
Yep. That was a quick question. One more? I believe, yes, the green spike shirt.
What would be a really good idea is to have a part on the website that just says accessibility, so people can click on that, because I didn't even know about the recharge rooms and some of the other things you talked about when I tried to navigate it with my screen reader. I don't know if anyone else here saw anything on the website, but if you had an accessibility tab on the website so people could go down and see all the accessibility, then they could give direct input even before
Even before the
BronyCon.
con, that would be,
Yeah.
that is a fantastic idea. We are going to have to get with
Yeah.
design and PR.
Yes.
So those are fantastic, fantastic ideas. Thank you guys so much. This was really awesome. Thank you guys for coming. If you guys have anything else you want to talk to me privately about, I will be up here for another a few minutes. And then I'm going to go see about putting food in my belly.